AI can drive a car, write an email, and fake competence with the confidence of a junior consultant in a borrowed suit. So it is fair to ask a more personal question. Does AI make men less necessary, or does it merely expose how many men built their identity on jobs and roles that were always more fragile than they looked? Hello, my name is Gene. I'm building a club to help people navigate our AI cultural revolution. It is Guildrim. We will master the new AI tools, support people displaced by the machine, and lead them into the cybernetic future. Our topic today is whether AI makes men less necessary. Let's begin. For a long time, the old bargain for men was simple: be useful, earn money, carry weight, learn a trade, master a profession, or at least become the man people called when something needed doing. You did not have to be loved by the culture. You had to be needed by it. That bargain is starting to crack. AI is changing the value of many kinds of work, especially the white collar work that once gave young men a ladder into adult competence. The old office path used to be messy, but clear enough. A young man did boring tasks first. He made slides, drafted memos, fixed spreadsheets, sat in meetings, and slowly learned how the machine of work actually ran. It was not glamorous. It was apprenticeship in a necktie. Now the machine may be taking the apprenticeship. Harvard Business School reported in February 2026 that generative AI could affect 50 million US workers by automating millions of entry-level jobs, even as it opens some new opportunities for AI-savvy workers. Found. That is the part people often miss. AI may create openings at the same time it destroys the old on-ramp. That matters because many men still build identity through visible usefulness. When the first rung disappears, the problem is not only lost income, it is lost initiation. A man can survive being broke for a while. What is harder to survive is the feeling that society no longer has a place where he can prove himself. So the question is not merely whether AI takes jobs. The deeper question is whether it tears up the old map men used to become necessary in the first place. I does not hit every group the same way, and that matters more than the average headline. A machine does not disrupt the labor market in some neat, abstract way. It lands on actual people with actual weak points. In many cases, men may not benefit from AI as much as the glossy presentations suggest. That is partly because many men still tie identity to visible usefulness. They want to be the one who solves the problem, carries the load, fixes the thing, earns the respect, and stands somewhere in a pecking order they can at least understand. AI interferes with that because it changes how value shows up. Some tasks vanish, some are hidden behind software, some are handed to fewer people with better tools. The result may be higher output and lower dignity at the same time, which is a very modern bargain. An IMF paper published in January 2026 on Finland's labor market found that while most workers there may benefit from AI adoption, about one-fifth of the workforce is at risk of job displacement. The same paper says men, lower educated workers, and immigrants may gain less from AI adoption, largely because they are concentrated in jobs with lower exposure to AI's productivity benefits. That point matters because a man can handle hardship better than humiliation. Hardship at least leaves him something to fight. Humiliation tells him he is no longer needed in the first place. So the problem is not only that AI may remove some jobs, the problem is that it may also widen the gap between men who can turn the machine into leverage and men who simply watch their role grow thinner. One group becomes more powerful, the other becomes more optional, and very few men dream of growing up to become optional. The deeper wound here is social, not merely economic. Men do not only fear losing income, they fear becoming unneeded. That is a different kind of pain. A smaller paycheck stings. A smaller place in the world corrodes. For many men, work has long served as more than a source of money. It has been proof of usefulness. It has been a way to justify one's place in the family, in the community, and even in one's own mind. A man could look at a hard day and say, "At least I carried something." At least I mattered to someone beyond myself. AI puts pressure on that feeling because it weakens old roles. At the same time, modern society offers men very few replacements. The result is not merely anxiety, it is drift. Pew Research reported in January 2025 that men in the United States do not say they feel lonely more often than women, but they do seem less likely to turn to their networks for social connection and emotional support. Women are more likely than men to say they would reach out to friends, family members, or mental health professionals for emotional support. That matters because a man with a weakening work role and a weak support network is in a dangerous spot. He may not talk, he may not ask for help, he may simply absorb the blow and grow quieter. Outwardly, that can look like stoicism. Inwardly, it can feel like erasure. This is why the question is larger than jobs. A machine can take a task, society, carelessly arranged, can take a man's sense of being needed. And when that happens, the real crisis is not technological at all. It is civilizational. A man can endure hardship. What breaks him is the creeping sense that nobody would notice if he stopped carrying the load. Once the economic script weakens, emotional substitutes become much more tempting. That is where AI stops looking like a work tool and starts looking like a social sedative. A man who feels less necessary at work may start to feel less necessary everywhere else too. If he is already lonely, already frustrated, already unsure what he offers to other people, then a machine that gives attention on demand can feel less like a novelty and more like relief. It listens instantly, it responds warmly, it never rolls its eyes, it never says you are too much, too awkward, too boring, or too late. That is powerful bait for men who already suspect the world has little use for them. The trouble is that synthetic attention is not the same thing as human bond. It can soothe a wound without healing it. The American Psychological Association reported in early 2026 that AI chatbots and digital companions are reshaping emotional connection, and it noted research suggesting that excessive use may worsen loneliness and erode social skills. That is the dark little bargain hiding inside the convenience. The thing that feels like company may slowly make real company harder to bear. That matters because a man who feels unwanted can start mistaking frictionless attention for love. The machine becomes a mirror that flatters him forever. No demands, no real vulnerability, no growth, no risk. It is companionship with the sharp edges sanded off, which sounds pleasant until you remember that the sharp edges are often where real intimacy begins. So if AI makes some men feel less necessary, it also offers them a counterfeit cure. It says, you may not be needed by other people, but I can still make you feel desired. That is not healing. That is anesthesia with good bedside manners. Thoughtful, check time equals sign quote, 0.5s quote slash. The final twist is that AI may reduce the need for some kinds of labor while increasing the need for something deeper, judgment. That is where the story turns. If a machine can draft the email, summarize the meeting, analyze the spreadsheet, and even give decent advice in a smooth professional tone, then the men who remain necessary will not simply be the men who use AI. Everybody will use AI. That is no longer a distinction. The real distinction will belong to the men who can still tell when the machine is wrong, shallow, reckless, or blind. That sounds obvious until you notice how few people actually do it. Microsoft researchers reported in 2025 that among 319 knowledge workers sharing 936 examples of AI use, higher confidence in AI was associated with less critical thinking, while higher self-confidence was associated with more critical thinking. The same research found that AI shifts human effort toward verifying outputs, integrating responses, and supervising the system rather than doing every step directly. That matters because the machine does not remove the burden of responsibility. It changes its shape. Somebody still has to decide. Somebody still has to verify. Somebody still has to bear the cost when the answer sounds polished and turns out to be nonsense. In a healthy society, that role should command respect. In modern life, People often mistake fluency for wisdom, which is how bad systems survive far longer than they deserve. So does AI make men less necessary? It may make some old roles thinner. It may make routine competence cheaper. It may expose how many men built identity on jobs that were always more replaceable than they wanted to believe. But the serious version of masculinity does not disappear here. It sharpens. A man who can judge clearly, endure uncertainty, master tools without worshiping them, and carry responsibility when others hide behind software may become more necessary, not less. The machine can imitate skill. It still cannot replace character. Thoughtful AI does not make men less necessary in some total, final sense. It makes certain old forms of male usefulness less secure. It strips away routine work, weakens old ladders, and exposes how many men were relying on a social script that no longer holds together. That is why the subject feels so raw. It is not only about economics, it is about whether men still have a clear way to become needed by other people. That is the real crisis. A society can survive with fewer clerks, fewer junior analysts, fewer middle managers, and fewer men doing repetitive tasks in offices. What it cannot survive, at least not gracefully, is a growing class of men who feel unnecessary and begin to live like ghosts in their own country. Determined, still, this is not a funeral for masculinity. It is a test. The machine may reduce the value of routine output, but it raises the value of judgment, steadiness, courage, discernment, leadership, and the ability to bear responsibility when things go wrong. Those were always the serious parts of manhood anyway. The softer imitations may wither, the deeper thing remains. So the real question is not whether AI makes men less necessary. It is whether men will become the sort of men no machine can replace. If you want to keep thinking through what technology is doing to men, work, and culture, stay with me, like the video, comment below, and subscribe to the channel, where we help creatives build community in the age of AI. And until next time, remember, a grand world awaits.